Hi there, I'm Deborah. I have two sisters, Catherine and Elizabeth. They were the stars in our family, the most popular models, the prettiest, the smartest, and everything. All except for me. The three of us are yearlings, only I was always different from my sisters in looks and personality. They always preferred a more luxurious environment and lifestyle in general, while I preferred something else, something more down to earth. That was the reason for this big story I'm about to tell you. Catherine and Elizabeth loved more than anything else to wear makeup and go to salons and stores. Maybe that's why they were noticed when they were 6 years old, and from then on, they worked as models, first for cheap clothing stores, then for richer stores, then for magazines. Later, they were invited to TV, radio, their photos shown in magazines, billboards, and so on. They were almost always silent about the fact that they had another sister, me. In case of an unplanned appearance in public, they pretended I was their lackey and shoved their handbags at me quickly, but the press was not that easily fooled. Eventually, everyone found out about me too. Our mother reluctantly talked about me in interviews and kept going on and on about respecting my father. What was the point of that? I didn't understand it myself. She also kept saying that our roots are aristocratic. It added pathos to their lives. They held a beautiful fork and knife, and that's all. They adored the cheap drama of Catherine. When her father would put a limit on her credit card, she would immediately drop her appliances, put her hand over her forehead, and pass out with a sigh of sorts. Mom would immediately burst out, "Honey, aren't you ashamed to say that? She has a shoot. She's nervous, and besides, you know how expensive it is to be beautiful." "Her expenses are 4 times her income, and we have another daughter. This is taking into account that Deborah spends almost nothing." Mom was freaking out so much at this point. I always felt a chill from her, but I thought she was only doing it because I wasn't as pathetic and pretty as my sisters. Money wasn't everything to me. It was good that my father was earning it. But one day he got sick. He got so sick that he went into a coma. I didn't come out of his room for 2 weeks, unlike my sisters and my mother. They came in occasionally, and only to see journalists at the hospital entrance. In the meantime, my father's condition was worsening. His company was in a crisis, and the signature of the deputy general director was needed. She called a press conference and said she was going to take over all the responsibilities of the company and give half of the estate to the children, supposedly dividing it equally between Catherine and Elizabeth. We sat in the audience, and I looked at her with round eyes. The reporters asked the question, "Well, what about Deborah?" And my mom said, "She's not my daughter by blood. She's adopted, so the rule doesn't apply to her." I broke into a cold sweat. My whole childhood flashed before my eyes. The reporters began filming me close up, asking me if I knew about this, who my real mother was, and why the truth had been kept from me. "I don't know!" I shouted as I ran home. I cried so long that I didn't even notice my sisters coming in. From that moment on, they humiliated me more openly. My mother never even said hello to me. She also said that they'd picked me up from the street, and that if anything happened, I would have to leave their house, since they'd fulfilled their mission to my father, to raise me. My mother thought of everything. She said she'd pay me if I told reporters that I'd left home on my own to look for my birth parents. My father was still in a coma. I went to him with my things to say goodbye. I cried, but he couldn't hear me. Then I left town. My life became a living hell. I took the money and promised my mom to write a video post about it on social media, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I wondered who I actually was and where I was from. When I rented a hotel room, there was an acquaintance of mine at the reception. He was the son of my father's former driver. He knew me. He said he was sympathetic and had heard the news. I thanked him politely and went to my room. A little later, he knocked and brought me some hot food. We got to talking, and he was surprised to hear that I left so easily, without even trying to find out if what my mother said was true. I was in denial for a long time, until he offered to help. Billy said he remembered my father, and even if I was adopted, there was no way he would give me $1 less than the other girls. He was right about that, but as soon as he said that, I got a text. "Make a post, or it'll be worse." It was Catherine. I turned off my phone and looked out the window. Billy came up to me, wanting to say something, but just then a rock flew into the window from the street. Billy covered me from it. The rock hit him in the shoulder. "What? Who is that? How did they know I was here?" He closed the curtains and said, "Your phone. Get rid of it." More rocks flew into the room. Billy grabbed my hand and we ran to the back door. We got on his bike and took off in an unknown direction. We hid at his friend's strange house. Billy said there was something wrong with the urgent need for my video, so I told him I had to go home and review the files. There must be something in them. Billy volunteered to help me. We took his friend's car and drove to my house. It was a long drive, but safe. It was almost morning, and I knew my sisters and mom might be awake, so Billy pretended to be a drunken passerby and rammed on the door, distracting them while I climbed in through the window. I sneaked into my dad's office and went through all the paperwork, but I couldn't find anything. Damn, I said to myself. When I opened the door, I ran head-on into Elizabeth. We looked at each other and both froze. Please, please. Yes, Mom, I'm coming. Just a minute. She pretended not to notice me and left, for which I was grateful. I walked along the walls and saw Mom chasing Billy away, screaming, and shut the door. I had to get to the window of the room. I was almost there, and I heard her say, "Damn girl, she was always giving me trouble. I hope her daddy dies soon enough for me to get the other 50%. And it went through my head. My daddy? So my daddy is my daddy. Mom, she's here! Catherine had managed to grab me just in time. The three of them tied my hands, saying mean things. I sat there enraged. My mom asked me if I was looking for a file, and then she showed me a folder that said I really was a foster child. It was like I got smashed all over again. Mom said that if I didn't tell everything tomorrow at the press conference, she would make my life even worse. They kept me in my room all night. In the morning, they put on my makeup and clothes and brought me to a big office where the press conference was waiting. I was down again, but I decided to do as I was told. Collect the money and get the hell out of there. Billy wasn't allowed within 10 feet of me. He stayed outside. I stood in front of the microphone and looked at the cards with my prepared speech. Everyone waited in silence, and I suddenly burst into tears. I am Deborah Walsh, officially declaring that I am... The tears squeezed in my throat. I couldn't continue, and some man in the front row asked, "Why did you even think you were adopted?" My mother intervened and showed them a document. Documents can be forged, but memories and pictures can't. What do you mean? Who are you, anyway? I worked as a driver for Mr. Walsh. My memory is like a computer. I picked up this little girl from the maternity hospital, and Mr. Walsh gave her a name. This girl's mother chose a different path in life a long time ago, and you didn't show up until 1.5 years after she was born. I have 3 photos from that time as proof that Deborah is Mr. Walsh's daughter, as well as a photo from your private party to celebrate your marriage to him. The father of your other daughters is in prison, right? You worked for him, same as me. Just at some point he fell in love with you. And now what? Instead of gratitude, you use his fortune and want to write off all his assets to yourself? Here's a picture, dear journalists. Thanks to this woman's meticulous plan, I burned all the photos and documents on her behalf. That was her order, but I still left a few, as I knew it. There was a commotion in the office. The whole thing was broadcast live. My mother was screaming and screaming, and my father's guards detained her and her daughters. The phone rang in the office. It was Dad's lawyer. He said right away that Dad had come to his senses and told me that all the documents were fake. I don't remember much of what happened next because I was too nervous. I thanked the driver and Billy for helping me. Mom was arrested as a fraud with her daughters. When Dad came to his senses, he destroyed the unnecessary paperwork and fired about 20 company employees who'd been working for Mom the whole time. You could say I got off easy.
Hi everyone, my name is Ralph. I want to share with you the story of how I adopted my son, but it got out of my way. I tried my best to be a good father, but in the end I became his worst enemy. Look at my history and write your opinion in the comments, what you think about this. In general, it was like this. I was 20 years old when I met and fell in love with the girl of my dreams. Her name was Sarah. She was so amazing that my head immediately blew off. I was sure that she was my destiny, so I did not hesitate, and after a couple of months I made an offer. Everything was fine with her until it came to the kids. We couldn't have a baby, and it was a nightmare. Sarah was obsessed with pregnancy and did everything she could to make it work. Sometimes I felt like she was challenging herself and couldn't carry out the plan, which made her feel bad. In the end, when we were running around the hospitals, when the strength and money were already running out, she offered me to take a foster child. To be honest, I didn't like this idea right away, because I believed that we still have time. After all, it's only been a year. I was sure that I just need to try again. Maybe stupidly change the situation and that's it. But Sarah did not listen to me. She ran around all these orphanages and looked for a child for us. She didn't even really consult me, and we had a lot of fights about it. In the end, she chose a boy in one of the boarding schools. You know, his name is Sam, and he was already 14 years old. Yes, this was far from a baby. Moreover, he already had a well-established mindset. He was not stupid, far from stupid, but so sharpened by the fact that he lives only one day. Sam was wild, like everyone else from boarding school, I think. In short, our first meeting with him took place, in fact, already at our home. I didn't go to pick him up from the orphanage. I decided to go to work instead. Sarah was beaming with happiness, but she knew I didn't support the idea. I held out my hand to Sam, and he looked at it like I was showing him my fist, very aggressively, so I took my hand away and went to my bedroom. In the evening we were going to dinner, and I sat down in my usual seat, but Sarah asked me to move. You see, Sam liked my place. I was indignant. They say I had been sitting there for a year, but Sarah asked me to give up the child. Okay, I agreed. After a while, it turned out that he liked my mug, my plate, my razor, my towel, and robe. I became really angry. What else could he like next? Maybe I belong in this house. I was angry with myself, but I didn't say anything yet, so we lived like this for about a week. It seemed endless, and I wanted it to be over and Sam to go back to his room, but I knew it would be cruel of me to take him there by the hand. And Sarah, she devoted all her time to him, didn't even pay attention to me, didn't talk to me, didn't look at me, and didn't even listen. She was fully occupied only, as she said, with our son. But what can I do? I didn't feel that it was ours. He was a strange adult guy to me. What kind of son can he be to me? One day, Sarah ran off on business and left us alone. We sat down to breakfast. As soon as she left, I immediately took out my phone and began to stare at it and eat more. Sam turned up the TV and looked at it. A few minutes later, I heard him rummaging in the purse that Sarah had left behind. The guy took her wallet, pulled out the money, and put it all back. I'm just freaking out from such impudence. Why did you take someone else's money? Not even shy, I asked maliciously, and Sam says to me, it's not your money, I want to take it. I tried to explain to him that this is our money and that he is like our son and so we do not have in the house, but brazenly told me that Sarah is his new mother and that she loves him more than me and that very soon I will not be in this house. And then I burst out. I got angry. I started yelling at him, and then Sarah came in. She saw such a picture, Sam is still an actor, immediately fell to the floor and pretended to hit him. I told him it wasn't true, that he'd made it up, but Sarah wouldn't listen. Well, then Sam said I yelled at him for stealing money when he didn't take it. Sarah reached into her wallet and couldn't find any money, so I told her to check his pockets. Sam turned them out and showed them that they were empty. But how is this possible? I saw it myself. Then Sarah came up to me and felt my pockets, where she found the money. How did he manage to slip them to me, and when? Do you understand what happened after that? That's right, Sarah kicked me out of the house. Sam got his way, he pushed me out, and now he had no boundaries. He took my rightful place. Sarah didn't even look at me as I packed my bags, and the nasty guy opened the door for me and waved goodbye with a grin. I was so angry. I went to see my colleague. It's good that he took me in and told him about the situation. Then he asked me to stay with him temporarily and come up with a plan to get back. A colleague said that there would probably be a time when Sam decided to steal from Sarah very big and that this would require proof. Of course, not all at once, but it's worth waiting and catching the moment. First of all, on the advice of a colleague, I wrote to Sarah that I love her, but since there is no place for me in the house, I am leaving for my homeland. She knows where I'm from. It was important that she knew I wasn't here and that Sam found out. As we all knew, as soon as I kind of left, the little bastard got really fucked up. While Sarah was at work, he didn't go to school, threw parties at our house, drank alcohol, and smoked drugs. I caught it all on camera. Sam stole a car from our neighbors and got drunk behind the wheel. He crashed the car and immediately called Sarah and said it was all my fault. That is, her husband. Yeah, in this state, he forgot I wasn't around. I could hear everything, sitting nearby from behind the bushes and filmed everything. 30 minutes later, Sarah arrived. She was dealing with the neighbors. At this time, Sam's friends managed to escape, and he took something to cut off. Sarah wrote out a check for car repairs and then went to the house to deal with it. I technically climbed to the second floor and sat next to the window to listen in on the conversation. Sarah told him that I was out of town, and then she cried bitterly, saying that it was hard for her to be with him. Instead of asking for forgiveness, Sam raised his hand to her and slapped her to the face. Sarah was in shock and asked him not to do it, but he hit her again. I couldn't stand it and climbed through the window. They were both in shock, and then I showed them the video. Sam didn't know what to say, and Sarah started to cry even more. Everything was clear. Yes, we got the baby back. My wife realized that we are not ready to raise such an adult child. So for now, we agreed to become parents of our baby, and then we'll see.